And this meeting of Committee Ratonga Oti, I've forgotten what is the name, Committee Ratonga Aotearoa Kairangi, or the Hutt Valley Services Committee. Must get that down pat. And I invite you to just look at the emergency procedures if you haven't seen them before. I suspect all of us have probably been in this building a few times. So if we can then move on to the opening formalities, we have the karakia, which will appear before you on the screen. And welcome to read it along with me. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kinakina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ihi aki ana te atakura, hei tio, hei huka, hei hohu, ti hei Māori ora. Just moving on to apologies. We have apologies from Mayor Guppy and Councillor Newell, and also just noting we have Deputy Mayor Swales attending as the alternate, and just checking if there's any other apologies. I don't note any. So I'll move that the apologies from Mayor Guppy and Councillor Newell be accepted and a leave of absence be granted. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Griffiths, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, no. Declare that carried. Just moving along to public comment. I'm not aware of any at this stage. There being no public comment, just moving on to the conflicts of interest declarations. Does anyone have a conflict of interest they'd like to declare? No, thank you. Moving on to item 5, the minutes of Hutt Valley Service Committee meeting on the 3rd of May 2024. I move that those minutes be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Griffiths again. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Yes. So just noting that the abstention from Deputy Mayor Swales. Right. First, full order business being the wage update from the 1st of April 2024 to 31st of August 2024. Could I invite Bruce Hodgins to come up, a Strategic Advisor for Hutt City Council, and we've also got Steve Hutchinson, I see, from Wellington Water.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start off today with a couple of presentations which Steve is going to run through. There are two items of particular interest. The first one is the Days Bay leak that occurred. Just want to run through that quickly and go over what happened there. The second one is to go through the State Highway 2, the wastewater pipe under the State Highway 2, just walk you through some detail on that. So I'll hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Bruce. So I guess by way of background for the Days Bay site, because it was large, it was quite complex, it's worth understanding a little bit of the history. The site that we refer to as Days Bay Pump Station is at the north end of Days Bay. It serves wastewater from Mahina Bay and the northern end, about 850 people. It's been in operation since 1945 when it was just a septic tank with an outfall to the harbour. In 1962, it was upgraded to being a pump station with a grinder system and pumping into that outfall pipe from Seaview to Pencarrow. And then in 1997, when the decision was made to treat at Seaview, there was a new pipeline laid all the way back from Eastbourne to Seaview that picked up 3 pump stations, including this one. And so the old connection was kept to the outfall pipe. On the Saturday, 10th of August, our operations team responded to a leak outside the pump station. They turned off the Days Bay pumps, but that didn't stop the leak fully. So at that stage, it was obviously a more complex, large issue. And they escalated it to our emergency management team, company-wide response. There are 2 valves from that outfall pipeline to the pump station. Neither of those were able to be successfully closed. And so we had to make the call to shut off the main pump station, from Seaview, and divert the treated flow to the Waifetu stream on the Sunday. And that was to be able to take the pressure off to be able to excavate and make the repair. As part of that, parts of the outfall pipe required draining to be emptied to allow the work to happen, and the pipe back from Eastbourne, those 3 pump stations had to be turned off. So that's just a couple of pictures there, into the Waifetu stream and some of the discharges on the Sunday. It was a difficult operation with about 5 sites requiring resource and attention. Not only was Days Bay the focus, but we also had, as I mentioned, Point Arthur pump station at Eastbourne and York Bay pump station also had to be shut off because they were backflowing into the leak, and sucker trucks were arranged for those initially while we managed to get them back up and running safely. We had a couple of places we were emptying the outfall pipeline to the harbour, and obviously the Waifetu stream discharge, which the local iwi put a rahui on the Monday. So the focus of the work was first on repairing that outfall pipe, that valve, the closest valve that had failed. There's a picture of it in the bottom left there. It's an older valve. The second valve was from 1997, but that had sheared off. This was just over 3 metres deep next to the road. A lot of underground services, gas, power, water, and telecom and sewer. And so it required a few days of getting a custom trench shield to make the work safe to get down to that depth. And then the valve was replaced, and on the 22nd we started recharging it and got the pipe into operation fully by the 24th. While we were doing that, to minimise discharge of wastewater to the environment, we put on sucker trucks, had a 24/7 operation. These are managed to contain most of the discharge, not all of it, but it's worth noting it's an expensive and disruptive operation. So, also complicating this job was the location of the pump station next to Penguin Sanctuary. So the pump station in the centre there, those 3 yellow areas have penguin nesting boxes. So there was some work with Doc and iwi, the penguin specialist, to avoid the penguins and keep them out of the work site. And then the work on site really was focused around replacing those valves which were not operational, and some corroded pipe work from the pump station up to the 1997 plastic pipe, which had failed. So it took a couple of weeks to get the work done. It was done at pace, and we managed to recommission Days Bay on the 5th of September. So that was my short summary to supplement the paragraph there. If there's no questions, I'll move into the State Highway 2.
Just checking for questions. Councillor Shaw.
Thanks for the presentation and good work on getting it done so quickly. I know it was a major work. Just a question for me about the environment. Will there be any shutdown on the effects of the environment immediately around that area?
There was monitoring and sampling undertaken basically daily for the microbiological indicators. So we had a focus on public health in terms of people swimming or fishing there. So that came back pretty quickly, and after the discharge stopped, and we've got monitoring in the Waifetu stream and Hutt River mouth area, which is still being analysed.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple of questions with regard to that. So the pipes that you replaced are 52 years old. What's the expected life expectancy of those?
Top of my head, concrete line steel would be in that 60 or 80, probably 80-year range normally.
So we're saying the condition or the environment that they were laid in probably added to the shortening of their life?
Yes, yeah, it was a saline environment by the coast. There was another complication that the records weren't consistent with what was there, and the records had showed that that part had been replaced in 1997 with a plastic pipe, so that didn't help.
So with that and knowing that knowledge, so what does that mean for the rest of that pipeline if you're saying that the integrity or the records of that pipeline weren't correct for you to make a fair assessment of longevity or life of that pipe?
We've been looking at the other two pump stations which were modified at the same time to check that those arrangements are recorded correctly. So we've identified that the location of one of those pipes needs updating, but yeah, we're definitely checking that.
So with regard to the sucker trucks, right, where did the contents of those sucker trucks end up?
Yeah, initially we were taking them to a site in Seaview, but that caused a bit of disruption to the business, and so we changed to go to the York Bay pump station after the first week or so.
My final question, if that's right, thank you for your tolerance, Chair. So will we be given a price of what the cost of this has affected us budget-wise? Because it was obviously an unplanned break that we had, and knowing that money is tight, it would be good to know what the price tag is and where it will come from.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we will get back a price to you, or the cost of the work. So it still hasn't been finalised, but we are talking somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million.
I'll just take a pregnant breath there.
Any further questions? No, thank you.
So moving on to the Western Hills sewer, as we talked about in the May meeting, we initially identified 350 metres. We had two upstream sections were still to be checked. They came back also in very poor condition, so that's given us a total of just under 600 metres. The section upstream of that is being confirmed in grade 4, so what we call poor condition, so not as urgent. So these pipes run along that the left lane of the northbound State Highway 2, and then cross completely across over to the river verge. The very downstream of that is tied up with that Riverlink project, but this section is just to the north of that. So we arranged for one of our consultants to get into investigation of the options, and they've come to the conclusion that what we call a cure in place lining is basically the only practicable method to do it, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. But the actual, to give a context of the degradation, I've got a photograph there from the closed circuit TV that shows the hydrogen sulfide damage, corrosion to the concrete. So the lower third of the pipe is the profile from some laser profiling is on the top part there. The lower profile is original. There's no loss of concrete, but the upper profile we've lost at the worst place 37 millimetres of the 60 millimetre thick pipe. So that's badly corroded, very badly. Our assessment, as I mentioned back in the May meeting, we had a specialist look at it in terms of how imminent it was. Their conclusion was it's at the end of its service life. It doesn't have its design strength, but they said there were some mitigating factors in terms of there are no visible cracks at the moment, and the depth that is at helps in this case. So in terms of the method for repair and avoiding digging up State Highway 2, the technology that's proposed to be used is what they call a cure in place lining. So that's where you get a felt liner, like in that bottom right, that gets impregnated with epoxy resin and then inserted through into the pipe, pulled through the pipe from one access point to the other. And that results in a cured fiberglass section like this one I've had in my garage for 20 years. for a previous job, which is structurally as strong as the original, like 60mm concrete pipe. It's also corrosion resistant. There is some preparation work that needs to be done. The key issue is stopping the flow through the pipe, so we need to set up temporary pumps and a temporary pipeline around the work site, which is a tricky little operation, but that's been planned for. And we need to clean the pipe before the fiberglass is installed, and we also need to modify those manholes, those access points, some of which are in that left-hand northbound lane of Stay Highway 2. So there's quite a lot of interaction from the project team to the NZTA, the Wellington Transport Alliance. We've been having regular meetings to understand that. In principle, with the traffic management, we've got a general agreement to do the work during school holidays. It's a period of about 10 days planned to get in there to cut down those manholes, clean the pipe and install the new liner. Got a timeline on the next slide, but at the moment, Easter 2025 is the earliest we expect to be able to get in there to do that work. We have a couple of steps with confirming the design, going out to tender, awarding contract, ordering the liner, getting the liner, and then doing the installation work, which we need to move through. And we are moving this as fast as we reasonably can. If Easter's not feasible for some reason, then it would be a future school holidays. At the moment is the agreement with NZTA. Our estimate is just over 5.1 million for that 600 metres of pipe and the manhole work. The main risks that we're planning for and working to mitigate are the traffic management, firstly. Although we've got high-level agreement, we still need to get the contractor's methodology and work through the details with the NZTA people. And then, wet weather, basically. We can pump during dry weather, but when the flows get high during wet weather, we just couldn't keep up with pumping, so we'd have to wait a couple of days to get the flows down to be able to do the work. So those are the key risks there.
Councillor Griffiths, can I just interrupt you? Could you put your speaker?
If there was a weather event during that workspace, I mean, obviously you look at forecasting, but if there was a weather event, would there be a quite high risk of spillage, or what's the risk there?
No, the risk is more in delay of the work. So the preparation work can be done, the cutting down of the manholes. The actual inserting the liner is a relatively short period. It just needs the drier weather.
Question from Councillor Shaw.
Thanks for this presentation. I've been looking forward to hearing about what's going to happen. So just for my understanding, 589 metres in total. So that's the length of State Highway 2 right up to the Silverstream Bridge. Is that 580? No. The 589 is only at the Riverlink end.
Yes, it's the section where that yellow arrow is on the screen. So there's quite a few kilometres all the way up to Silverstream. Yeah.
And so the rest of the line north of that area is in a similar condition?
It's in slightly better condition. So we've called this condition grade 5 on a 1 to 5 scale. The section north has been rated as condition grade 4. So in general terms, we would put that in the do within 10 years, but a condition grade 5 is do within 3 years. Do as soon as you can.
Yeah. And so one area in particular, because I'm very familiar with it, I walk that area all the time, is around Taita Rock, where there's a lot of land subsidence. And what I think is exposed pipe. Is that a concern? Is that a concern? I worry about that pipe breaking and spilling into the river.
Sorry, I took the liberty of putting a couple of pictures in here of the Taita Rock situation. So Taita Rock is a different issue. As you will realise, it's the river erosion and the bank erosion which is the concern up there. So this first came to our attention back in 2010 when there was a large weather event, and the Hutt River Ranger called us up to suggest we have a look at it. So we had a geotechnical engineer at the time prepare that diagram on the right-hand side, showing that the lower part being grey wacky, the upper part being looser material, and the pipe being shown in that round circle. So because it's at a bend, there is some river erosion. The river's pushing against there. In 2022, after the Cyclone Dovi, February, there was some more erosion. So we went out and did an update and just crude lines on that red line there, showing that basically the slip had moved about 1 metre back. So from directly above the pipe, there used to be 3 metres to the edge of the slip. Now there's about 2 metres, and so it's a high consequence. If that pipe failed, it would be really difficult, and we'd have holding at the Silverstream tank for up to 24 hours, but we'd have to get in very quick and overpump. But we're taking steps to plan for that. It's more of a high consequence, lower probability risk up there. So we're definitely monitoring it and assessing it.
And I'd appreciate a copy of those slides, if you don't mind, just so I can answer some of the residents in my area. Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths.
Just on that point, I asked the chair if this whole presentation could be shared with both councils as a link, because our council would be interested in seeing most of the stuff as well. So Naomi, if hopefully that helps your need.
I see some nods, so it looks like that's going to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, no, certainly. We'll send it through to the secretary. Yep.
Question from Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora, thank you for the presentation. Quick question with regards to Taita Rock. Given the level of erosion, are we likely to get this addressed before the next winter season? If not, have we talked to Greater Wellington Regional Council in terms of changing the screeding on and the river rocks down underneath there so that we actually pull the water away from the main flow away? And the second question is, what's the lifespan of the new insert? Are we back up to an 80-year lifespan there?
I'll start with the last question first. It's the cure in place pipe liner has a design life of 50 years. Back to Taita Rock, we certainly have been talking to the regional council flood people and suggested that they might want to slow the erosion down. Their perspective, their policy is that they don't undertake work to protect third-party assets. So it's the asset owner's responsibility, but they're happy to support with technical advice and so on.
Councillor Griffiths, then.
Thank you. Just a subsequent question after Councillor Parkins. The 50-year lifespan of the composite pipe, price comparison between the two jobs, I'm assuming it's a massive difference, but do you have that?
It would be more expensive to put a 100-year life pipe in that ground, in that location. So putting a liner in is definitely the more cost-effective approach.
Do you have any indication on what it would be? No. That's fine, sorry.
Councillor Swells, then we have a question from Councillor Dyer.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here. So with regard to the inner tube that you're going to put down there, will it restore it back to the original 60 millimetres? Because at the moment you're telling me that it's 37. And if you put this tube down there, will we get back the original pipe diameter?
The 27 metres is related to the outfall pipe.
Okay.
This one's a gravity pipe, so it doesn't operate under pressure.
But you said that there was some integrity with, when I look at slide...
Oh, sorry. Oh, the 60 millimetres. Sorry,
Yeah.
the millimetres of gap. No, the liner will reduce the internal size of the pipe.
By how much?
By about 20 millimetres. But it's a smoother pipe than the concrete, so the amount of flow you can get through the pipe is effectively the same.
Oh, so we
Yeah.
won't be losing anything,
no.
okay. So is the traffic management cost factored into that 5.1 million?
Yes, it is, and I imagine it's substantial, but it is factored in at that concept of, a single lane closure for 10 days.
That's good to know, because I do know that it'd be horrific. If I go back to the overview map that you've got, it's just so that I've got an understanding. What are all of those H's and red lines and green lines that you've got there? Are these feeders into that pipe?
Sorry, that's our what we call the GIS,
Right.
showing the 3 water services. So the
Right.
green lines are stormwater lines, the blue
Okay.
lines are potable water,
Yeah.
and the little red lines are the local sewer lines that feed into that pipe.
Okay,
Yep.
so even the ones, so if I go to the west and the east of that, they're all feeders into the pipe that we're fixing. So when I look at city
Yes,
side.
no, the pipe we're fixing is the trunk, the
Yeah.
backbone. There are feeders into it all the way up Kelson and
Right.
Manor Park and so on. Yep.
Okay,
So they'll be dealt with during the work. Yep.
okay. So do we have an estimate of how many houses will actually be, I know that Upline and Upper Hutt, how many residents and commercial businesses that will be affected coming down into this? But do we know in the Lower Hutt area, how many people would be affected? Because I know you're going to do a diversion around, right?
Yeah, the
Because
idea
you
is that
can't just-
no one's affected. That
Okay.
the diversion takes, people
Take
can flush
everything.
as normal.
Okay, all right. No, that's all I had to ask. Thank you.
I have a question from Councillor Dyer, who's attending via Zoom.
Thanks. My question was just answered there at the end was, will the pipe be out of action for a while or will we be diverting it? So yeah, you just answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Mr. Hodgins, is that the end of your discussion on the paper? And Steve?
There was only one other thing that I was going to add, and that was in respect of the works that are going on in the Bible. We say that we are on track with that. So the first 5 cells out of the 6 are now virtually complete. Substantially completed, and so we're ahead of that schedule.
Thank you. Looks like there's some more questions. Firstly, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. My question's in regards to Waifatu Stream. I guess I don't need to tell you, there's been a lot of public comment lately about the discharges, dry weather and the wet weather discharges. My question, just from my understanding, is there any future planning around no discharges at all into Waifatu Stream? Or is everything plumbed to run into the Waifatu Stream?
So the work that's being done at the moment, the Ropu, that is meeting, that's with the Mana Whenua iwi groups, ourselves in Upper Hutt City and Wellington Water. We're looking at a solution that is going to be the best for the network. So we're looking at the whole network, and the aim is to absolutely reduce the number of times that we need to have that overflow use. So that number has increased over the last few years, and we want to get that right back to a bare minimum. But it's Steve may have some further comment, but my understanding is it's virtually impossible to not have the overflow. At some point in time, you will have an event that is of such magnitude that you'll need the overflow, or you have an issue at the plant where you need to get in to deal with a piece of plant that you will have to do that. So I don't believe that it will ever be down to 0.
Thank you. I have a number of questions with regard to the paper that was put in here. And when I go through the reading of the paper and I look at the various paragraphs that we've got, my biggest concern is that there's a lot of equipment failure that has actually been identified in this paper, starting at paragraph 14, then I go to 22, then I go to 23, which is maintenance renewal, then I go to 24, 25. So are all of these maintenance failures or projects that need to be fixed, or equipment that have been identified that need, that are in a poor condition, Are these all factored into the work program that has already been agreed to with Seaview?
So if I could answer that
Yep.
to start with, and if you have, if there's additional comments from the team. The Seaview plant, a lot of the working plant is coming to the end of its working life. And so this program of works that we're undertaking, the 205 million over the next 10 years, is in regards to the renewal of a lot of that plant. So this is a result of plant coming to the end of its working life, and the chances that it's going to fail or break down are increased as it gets towards that end of that life. So that's a general response, but Blair or Jeremy, you might have other thoughts.
Yeah, just I guess confirming what Bruce said, that the plant is at the end of its life, and we have got a program of renewals that we need to undertake over the next 10 years. I guess the complicating factor is that we have to keep the plant going while we undertake those works. So given that we have to keep the plant going, it makes it quite tricky, and so that's why the time frame is what it is. Given all the funding in the world, it would still take us time to undertake those works as we bring the plant back up to better condition.
Whilst I understand that the total cost over a 10-year period is $205 million, my concern is when I put an overlay of climate change and resilience and it coming to its end of life, I'm wondering whether that's the best spend of our money, because $205 million is it a Band-Aid? Does it wind back the clock? And if it does, for how long? Should we actually be looking at another place for the silver stream or the waste to go? I mean, I haven't heard any of these questions that I'm posing to you now being offered in any of the papers that I've read that have come to this committee, or in any of the papers that have come in PowerPoint presentations to my particular council. So I am a little bit concerned that over 10 years we're going to spend this huge amount of money. So what will it actually do to Seaview if it is at its end of life or coming to its end of life in 10 years?
So what we're talking about here with renewal is the plant inside the building. So it's not about buildings, it's about plant. The plant that's there now is come to the end of its working life, 25 years. So the next, what we're doing is we're putting the investment in for the next 25 years. And in terms of climate change, that has been looked at. So we're not investing in Seaview in a way that's not going to get the benefit over that full time. So the work that has been done in terms of looking at the effects of sea level rise on the Seaview area, we're talking another 40 years maybe before that impact will occur. So well within the timeline that we've got here. But certainly my view would be that once this work is planned and underway, that there does need to be some thinking, long-term thinking about what happens in 40 years' time or 30 years' time when these when this plant is at the end of its life.
Councillor Swales.
Thank you for that response to my question, because when we're told that all councils up and down the country haven't been investing properly in their infrastructure, and that we should be looking at a longer period than the 10 years, we should be looking as long as our infrastructure plans, it's quite heartening to know then that, okay, we've got this plan that we're going to spend this money for 10 years, but it's nice to know that actually you're only winding back the plant for 40 years, but that's not actually the length of time that we require for our infrastructure plans and things like that. So it was a concern, so thank you for addressing that. Now, the other things that we've got there, so the casing, the building of this Seaview plant then is as resilient as what the inside working of it is going to be?
So we did some work on this a few years ago now in terms of seismic resilience. So quite a bit of investment was made to ensure that the buildings did meet that requirement. In terms of any new buildings that might go in, so like for the new the dryer, there'll be a new building facility. So looking at how that will sit on the site, so it may well be elevated on the site, taking into account sea level rise.
Chair, I just have one more question, and you might, I'll look to you for your direction, because it's actually not in here, but it was in a paper that came to Upper Hutt City Council, and it was a bill for Barber Grove. The question that I asked of my officers around that table was, is that the final sweep up of the cost of Barber Grove? Is it appropriate for me to ask that question here?
Yes, I think so.
That's my question.
As far as I know, yes, that is the final bill.
Thank you. Councillor Carson.
Thank you. I just talking about Appendix 1 to the paper where you list all the projects and give the purpose and summary and risks, etc. Being a financial person, I thought it would be beneficial to this committee to actually show the estimated costs and also what is being provided in both councils' long-term plans, if that was possible, for each of these projects. So we can, year by year, financial year by financial year, and therefore at the end of that table, a total cost or estimated cost or whatever, both for the estimated cost and also what's being put in the long-term plans of each council. So we can actually monitor just what the cost is for this. So great to see all the verbiage about the projects, but I would like to see, and I think councillors around the table would like to see just what it means in terms of dollar terms over financial years and also total project cost.
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like that's the end of the questions now, so I'll turn your attention to the recommendations in the report. And I move that the committee receives and notes the information in the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Shaw. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Moving along to item 7, which is update on the Silver Stream landfill and resource recovery. It's on page 23 of the agenda. So we've got Jeff Roberts, the Waste and Resource Recovery Manager from Hutt City Council. Anything you'd like to say in introducing the report, please?
Kia ora koutou. Just noting that broadly waste disposal is aligned with our target in terms of meeting airspace capacity to continue to operate the landfill and receive waste while we bring on the new cells. So that's in line. We'll be doing a bit of extra forecasting work to account for capital development costs and other cost increases, such as potential increases to ETS liability and the waste levy continuing to increase over the next 3 years. But those would be the main highlights. We're continuing to focus on diversion activities at the transfer station to create opportunities for the public to not dispose to landfill and to instead direct surplus materials through Earthlink. And yeah, so that continues to be a key focus, again, as part of preserving landfill space and improving resource recovery. That would be it at a high level, and happy to take any questions.
Perhaps I'll just start one for myself and then Councillor Shaw. That sounds like good news. I think our previous reports, we've been a little bit more hesitant about the demand versus the speed of the construction. So just wanting to, I see a nodding, just to confirm that we're now in a better position than perhaps we might have been forecasting a while ago.
That's right, yes. Certainly towards the end of last year, there was some concern that given the waste volumes coming in, that we weren't going to be able to bring on capacity in time. So now we're looking at a much healthier balance, and you'll see that in the graph in the appendix that projects airspace availability and waste disposal volumes. So we're sitting in that healthy range. And some of that has been because we've turned away contaminated soil from the landfill and have priced that now at a high level, which continues to constrain demand for disposal of that material in the landfill. There also seems to be a general decrease in the demand for disposal from commercial activities. And so the balance is sitting quite well, and bringing on the extra slope 12 as a contingency should we be delayed, and bringing forward the extra airspace from phase 3 is also giving us some comfort that we'll continue to be able to operate and accept waste into the future.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Shaw.
Oops. Oh, thank you. Actually, my question is about demand. I've got two questions here. And that is page 25, paragraph 14. And my understanding about the landfill was to try and reduce waste volumes, but we're now accepting applications for disposal of contaminated land. Is that because of the class of landfill at Silverstream Tip?
Yeah, so while we're now in the position to be able to accept contaminated land as I guess as an option, so we're wanting to also manage the revenue expectations of the landfill, so we don't want the waste disposal to sink to a point where we're going to run into trouble with our modelling. So it's a fine balance really in terms of how we manage the applications for contaminated land disposal. So we're now open to receiving those. It is priced at $500 a tonne, which makes it quite a lot more expensive than the other landfills in the region. So that is a bit of a limiting factor, though we are able to look at what the waste is constituted by and potentially bring it in at this general special waste rate as well, particularly if it can be put to some beneficial use in terms of cover material or some other form.
Thank you. My second one's about the asbestos cell. The dedicated asbestos cell remains on hold, so do we still accept asbestos up at the tip?
Yes, we do. There's still an asbestos disposal area on top of the old stage 1 landfill, so that's where double bagged asbestos is still taken and disposed. The asbestos cell is at the back of the landfill is still something that's in the work program, but it's been pushed forward so we can build more general airspace ahead of that.
Councillor Swales.
Thank you for the report. Councillor Shaw has asked one of my questions on 14, but I would like to go to page 24(9), paragraph 9. We had to take out some hard beech trees to make room. What did we do with those trees, is my first question.
Yes, so they've been logged and stacked on site, so they're still there. And we're looking at various options for using them in some way or form, reserving them for council projects. So hard beech is a timber that's durable outside, so you can use it in above ground applications. It could be park benches, it could be rain screens on buildings. I mean, there's lots of different possibilities. The issue is some of the logs are fairly low quality, some of them are not really millable. So we're talking to millers, we're talking to various people about how we could potentially come to a deal where we recover the good timber and store that for projects at a later date, and the rest is probably, it's quite a lot of firewood grade timber in there, unfortunately. We've had some conversations with local iwi as well around what they'd like, but we're just trying to work out a way to extract the high value timber from the material first and do that in an economic fashion.
And my next question is with regard to, I believe there was some sludge that was from the York Bay that was actually transported to the landfill. Is that correct?
Sorry. Yes, that would be the case. I'm not across the details of that. We are currently back to receiving sludge from Seaview wastewater plant because of the dryer not currently be operating at full capacity. So we are receiving wet sludge from Seaview at the moment.
My turn. And so what would be the cost of that? Because, you know, with the contaminated soil or land, well, you're looking at 500 per tonne. What would we be doing? Because all of these extra things, and I appreciate the level that the landfill is in, and that we can take an awful lot of things, but I'm also very aware of the lifespan of the landfill. And when we start opening ourselves up to things like this, that are unexpected, that weren't in the original projections of the lifespan of the fill, has there been any work with regard to, during that period with all the works that are viewed to happen in the previous paper that we've got, have we factored in the effect of that on the landfill?
Just to clarify, so your question is just about sludge from... Sure. So yeah, we're open to it. So on the sludge issue, we always will prioritise taking sludge from Seaview. There'll always be occasions when the dryer isn't able to function effectively, and sludge will be something that we will have to accept to keep the wastewater show on the road, so to speak. And that's fine. And the landfill's always prepared to do that. On the contaminated land issue, there's the ability to accept and reject applications as we need to manage airspace, and sometimes it's also to manage the operations of the landfill in terms of how much can be taken in 1 week, say. But we've always made it clear that we'll prioritise capacity for contaminated land for local infrastructure projects. So we're acutely aware that we don't want to stall or be a brake on stuff that needs to happen in regards to Wellington Water or any major civil projects like Te Awa Kairangi, Riverlink, and any other significant roading projects that might generate a lot of contaminated land. So we're in discussions with partners across the valley around managing those expectations and preserving airspace so that we can allow those projects to continue.
There being no further questions, I'll put the recommendation that the committee receives and notes the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Carson. Any comment? I'll put the motion then. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Our next report, item 8, is the Ekatera Cemetery update, page 30 of the agenda. So we've got Brett Latimer there, Parks and Reserves Manager from Hutt City Council, to speak to the item. Thank you, Brett. Any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Really the most significant thing here I just want to discuss is the agreement review. We have been making progress with my colleague down in Hutt City. Progress has been slow, but we are making progress. We just need a little bit of extra time. I think there's a bit of a difference in the way I'm thinking about this review. From my point of view, it's a review of the existing agreement, where a lot of the comments coming from Hutt City seem to more lean towards a rewriting of the whole document, not just based on the number of things that was identified. I guess one of my biggest concerns about this review is the the recovery of capital cost on the user fees, the charges. I'm going to obviously need some guidance from council. It's only from my point of view, I struggle with that. I'm not really aware of many other projects, development projects that look at recovering capital costs. I mean, most of our pools are not, the costs aren't covered through user fees. It just seems a bit strange, but it can be done. But I'm just saying, I think I need some I guess my council's point of view on that matter, and whether they're happy for that clause to stay in the agreement. There's other minor little things in there about when the cemetery closes that Upper Hutt City is responsible for the future maintenance, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think it should be shared within Hutt City because the bodies are still there. I mean, we've still got to maintain it as a cemetery. But there are only little smaller sort of things. To me, from my point of view, the agreement is working fine. I mean, I don't really have any issue with that. So we just sort of asking for a little bit more time. I know there was given September was the time we come back with it finalised. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. The other thing that came up was there was a recommendation or a discussion about looking at a combined services for cemetery services. I assume that meant that Upper Hutt would be looking at managing the Taita cemetery as one operation. At officer level, I don't think there's much interest in that, to pursue that at this stage. But once again, I think that would have to be from the governing bodies, both Hutt City Council and Upper Hutt City Council probably need to decide whether that's an option they want to pursue or not. Moving on to the cemetery development, we're making good progress on the developed design. I've seen the proposed developed design. The delay in the project now is going through the regional council to get approval to start clearing the land. The issue with the culvert crossing and the bit of clearing that we've done is all resolvable, and the fact that we're not going to be putting in a bridge in stage through saves a couple of $1 million off that estimated cost. It also saves quite a bit of money in the design cost. It's all coming together, and I think hopefully we're going to submit an approval in November to the regional council. The new section there in sustainability. Currently, we don't have a sustainability officer in Upper Hutt. That's a position that's currently being advertised at the moment. And I think the sustainability section with regard to the cemetery will expand rather than just a couple of sentences going in the future. But certainly with a contract going out through the design tender process, a lot of these carbon implications and sustainability gains will be part of that assessment. That's probably about all I need to say at the moment. If there's any questions.
Answer that one. Right. Para 9, and you say that a shared services model was now off the table. Well, I'd just like to point out that it's not the council officer's decision to take things off the table. That's what councillors do. So I'm a bit annoyed about that wording in that Para 9, Brett.
Okay.
The recommendation on the 3rd of May was for you to do the review, Hutt City and Upper Hutt City Council do the review, including a shared services model. So the shared services model is still on the table, and you need to come back to this committee and to the councils about the pros and cons of a shared services model. We will make the decision whether it's off the table or not. Thank you very much. Second point, in number 10, you asked for at least a couple of months. Then my expectation is that both councils will come back to this committee at the November meeting with a full report on the agreement and the shared services model, please. And Chair, I'd like that recorded in the meeting minutes, please.
Thank you. We'll note that in the, do you want to propose a recommendation or just noting in the minutes as satisfactory, Councillor Carson?
Update the 3rd of May recommendation to now have a report back by the November Shared Services Committee meeting with no exceptions. In other words, this is just going to slide and slide and slide.
I'm just not quite clear. Are you moving a recommendation that way, or you just want the minutes to note that?
Oh, just the minutes to note that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you for the report. Yeah, I had a similar question actually in regards to the shared service, because we still have 2 urupa here for both of our people, Akatarawa and Taita. So I see it as a shared service as well too. But my question is a little bit further ahead. I know you're in a development phase at the moment. Has there any been thought or consideration given to acquiring land past the current development? I say that because between us, we've probably got about 250,000 people. And so Akatarawa will only hold so many. So do we have any plans for after that?
No, not by way of for Upper Hutt. I think the expected life of the new development is about 41, 42 years. That's based on the current, on the current development plan. I know Hutt City is struggling to find additional land in its city. I think there is an option. The council hasn't looked at it officially, but there is some land in Whiteman's Valley that could possibly use in the future. But I think the focus at the moment is still on the development. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that. Because there has been some previous discussion about possibility of land in Wainui market, but I certainly think it needs to be on the table to be looked at if the Akatarawa is only, urupa has only got a life of 42 years. And I note that reading the other day, Pururua, urupa is also filling quickly as well. So I guess there's going to be a need for regional discussion around future. Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths.
Following on from that line of thought, is it something that we need to, as a committee, add to our requests of officers to explore that in a time frame, so to make a recommendation or something along those lines to say, could we start exploring it and maybe bring a report every quarter or half yearly to say that if there's been any exploration. Councillor Shaw was saying some in Wainui, we're talking about Whiteman's Valley, maybe that we push that forward rather than just let it sitting in the background.
I guess we're getting into a bit of a discussion, but in my mind, 42 years is quite a long time, and I just wonder whether there's enough on the plate at the moment with the current development and the review of the agreement and so on. But maybe that's something we just keep on our forward work program once that's well in train to start that looking around. Otherwise, there might be kind of slim resources being spread. Just my thoughts on that point.
Yeah, no, I think I talked about Whiteman's Valley. I just think if it is sort of identified as a possible alternative burial site, I'm not saying it's a big area either, but it, at least going forward in the next 40 years when discussions held on the reserve, there's a plan in there and not to build a community centre or not to dispose of it, or, it can help that way. Yeah.
Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks, Brett. My thoughts are more around we're starting to do new developments into areas of land, and if we don't have a policy or a mechanism to make sure that we're starting to explore those options and before we develop land or as part of land development, that these opportunities could be missed. And it is going to be a severe problem. I mean, if Hutt City can't find land inside its own boundaries to bury its dead, and we're a shared service, we need to start offering or looking at those options. Wainui will have a finite amount of burials as well. The only thing we need is a, what do you call it, explosion in deaths, and we, our years of 41 go down very, very quickly. The wheels of councils move quite slowly, so we need probably a 10-year minimum to be able to, bring on another cemetery. And if we have no land, 10 years isn't very long.
Councillor Swales.
Thank you. I believe the original intent when we looked at the expansion of this particular cemetery at Akatarawa, that the capacity was going to go way past the 42 years that was there. And because of the ecological study and the groundwork has actually reduced the capacity at that place. So I certainly agree that it should be on the radar, that we should be looking at where to go to from here, because all the stats tell us that our birth rate is declining and we have got an ageing population. So that is something that needs to be factored into the consideration. But then I also agree with the chair that if it's put on the radar, but our resources are quite strapped at the moment, we need to bed in this particular project that we've got on there, but just have it out there that when different committees that are affected in making the decisions of each council, that officers are constant on putting this on the table as a reminder when they make these decisions, that this needs to be taken into any decisions going forward.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy for it to just go onto our work program or forward work program, for not actually needing action, just to make sure that it's always there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carson.
Yes, I'd like to make a helpful contribution. How do you get more accountants in the cemetery? You bury them feet standing upwards.
Just to add to that comment, actually, we need to be a bit cognizant because some ethnic groups do bury their people like that, and they're not all accountants.
Or I could just add, maybe you could add capital costs just on the burials and make it like hugely expensive to it. That may reduce the.
Yeah, I think we're degenerating into some good humour, but I'm a bit nervous it might go a bit beyond that. So let's just get back to the recommendations then, if there's no further questions. I see there's none, so I'll move that the committee receives the Akatara Cemetery Update Report. A seconder, please. Councillor Carson. Just by way of comments, I sense we have a bit of frustration with our officer. We're pressing him to move ahead with agreements and so on in relation to the future of the cemetery, but there's a bit of a struggle getting minds aligned and some of the details here with on the Hutt City Council's side. So I'm not quite sure what is the best way to progress that if that is indeed the case, and whether perhaps we need some recommendation coming from this committee to help that along. Maybe not this time. We've got that noted in the minutes, the expectation that Councillor Carson has raised. We'll see how it goes, but if at our next meeting we're still feeling that bit of a deadlock on a couple of issues, we may need to just take that further to get something formal on our books, so to speak. Any other comments? If not, then I'll put that. Those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare. Moving on to item 9, which is our forward work program, on page 34 of the agenda. Any member have a question regarding that forward work program? Seems not, so I'll move the recommendation then that the committee receives and notes the forward work program for 2024 attached to Appendix 1 of the memorandum. A seconder, please. Councillor Griffiths. Just missed you, Councillor Dyer. Sorry about that. But I'll put the motion then. Those in favour say aye, and those against say no. Sorry, a bit quick, but I heard some ayes, so I declare that carried. So finally then, if we can draw your attention to the closing karakia. It's now appearing up on the screen. Please feel free to say that along with me. Unahia, 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 unahia i tu uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairu i te aura takatu. Koira i rongu, whakahiria aki ki runga, kia wātia, ewa kuatia, hau pai Mārie.